Right. Presentation of petitions, we have none, so we'll move on to our staff reports, which the first one is number 5 Moorhouse Avenue pedestrian improvements. So
yeah, so I'm happy to move option A for the Barbados Street and option B for Madras Street with one amendment, and that is not putting in the speed humps and then assessing after 6 months or a year to whether they are needed once the changes have been made.
well, I'll second that.
Yeah.
That recommendation.
I'll second that. Which is A and A, more or less. Yeah.
I like B for but removing the speed hump, if you like.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I can't support. I like B, but I can't support it if you're going to take the speed humps out of this.
So we'd say that is a separate thing. Yeah. Good. All right.
Kia ora koutou. So we're here today. The report in front of you is to seek approval for the Moorhouse Ave Pedestrian Improvements Project. We had the information session yesterday where we presented some more of the background and the feedback. So we'll take the report as read, and we can take any further questions from you today.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Right. So Pauline first.
Oh, thank you. I'm just resulting from the deputations. What's your comment on changing the sequence of the lights to allow cyclists more time to get through? Is that possible to look at? Could we include that as a noting item in the resolution?
I'll hand over to Lachlan for the traffic.
Just asking staff to have a look at that.
That's a possibility, yeah, that's operational thing.
Yes, but it's probably what you wouldn't normally perhaps do unless we had direct feedback. So
Depends on the circumstances. Generally, that's the sort of thing we might do around schools, etc. at school time. For a similar regard for pedestrian crossing.
and so also as part of all this work on both intersections, will there be new paint topped up along on the road and green markings has been requested?
So there will be at Moorhouse, Madras, Gathen. There was a recent project to upgrade the green coloured surfacing along Waldron Road on the approach to Moorhouse Avenue that's recently gone in. And then we can look at additional coloured surfacing at that intersection, but we're not, as part of this proposal, necessarily upgrading the cycle infrastructure at that intersection. So the feedback that was received through consultation period around cycle access at Waltham, Barbados, Moorhouse has been passed to our cycle network planner to look at the area more holistically.
Right, and just on that Barbados one, why is there not more treatment on the western side of that intersection? Because that surely would be the desire line when people are coming from the stadium out of town on foot and be on that side of the road. Or do you feel that that's okay the way it is?
I guess we're just trying to improve what's there in terms of providing that new crossing point and making the slip lane safer. This is being funded from the Minor Road Safety Programme, so we are looking at improvements as to what's really needed. If there's an issue with the existing crossing, which I wasn't necessarily aware of, we can look at that as well, whether it's timing or through road banking.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Right.
Thank you, Gemma. I'd like to ask a question about the Madras gas and Moorhouse intersection. We just heard from Danny about the cycling issues and seen his video. Does your recommendation in any way change or improve issues that he's raised? Because when I look at it, it still looks as if the cycling issue is still there.
So the northbound cycle lane on Gasson Street at the approach to Moorhouse Avenue gets slightly widened, and there's more space between the curb line on the northern side and the traffic lane. So we have tried to increase the space for people riding. But as Anne from Spokes commented, removing the slip lane means that you're removing one conflict point as well, because you've removed the kind of unrestricted turn. And as the first deputation from Greater Ōtautahi, people are just looking to the right and going when they can. And so controlling that with a light means that as a person on a bike, you've got one less issue to worry about. Because if you, I guess if they're sitting kind of slightly in the cycle lane to make that turn as a driver, then you're pushing the person on a bike even further out into the main traffic lane. So the proposal does make improvements. It's not going to provide a separated cycleway by any means, but it does provide more space and it removes a conflict, an unrestricted conflict.
And if a less confident cyclist chose not to use that intersection because of the safety hazards that still exist, notwithstanding proposal to remove the slip lane, where is the nearest separated or safe next level of service for cycle infrastructure in relation to this particular crossing line?
That is quite a tricky one, because if you're coming from the south, you've either got Antigua Street, which is quite a long way away, or you end up having to go around to get onto Ferry Road. It's your next protected cycle lane. So there is kind of like a big gap in terms of protected cycle infrastructure from the south.
And for the less confident cyclists, there's still nothing stopping them from getting off their bikes and walking across the.
Correct. So when we did some observations down on site for people turning right on their bikes and they weren't comfortable in either, and I think it was George also mentioned it, rather than biking through the intersection, they use this small little island as a kind of hook turn. So they go to the island and then make a turn. They would still be able to do that if the slip lane was removed, because we'd have more space. And I guess it is that space issue again, that if more people continue to use the island as a hook turn, then there's less room for people on foot. So thank you very much.
Hey, Mel.
Got a number of questions. So this whole thing came to council because it crosses two community board areas was the reason, wasn't it? So if option B was to pass, but then there were issues there in future, especially with more numbers of people, if that corner was to be dealt with, would that go then straight to the Papanui Inner Central Community Board to be dealt with?
So the reason it came through was because the in the last delegations register, if it was in the Part A area, then it would automatically come to council. But I think that was changed in March. So actually, yes, it could go to the community board for approval, unless it involved things like cycle lanes, which then come back to council.
Okay, and have you talked at all with Woolworths about purchasing some more of their corner?
No, we haven't.
Because that, if option B was to pass, that could be another possibility to get rid of some of those plants there, you know, and make more space.
That could be an option to discuss it.
So I would support that if we needed to. And yeah, but that's all.
Thank you. I can see in the report the number of movements heading from Moorhouse turning left onto Madras. I can see the numbers for morning and evening. Is there a daily figure handy somewhere?
I haven't really looked at it daily. I think that we were just looking at kind of the peak of the peaks.
Yeah,
and what
yeah.
The impact would be in removing that left turn.
Yeah, okay,
and
yeah.
That did seem to be less than those turning into Masterwood Street, which doesn't have a slip lane either. It was important comparison.
Yeah. It's got 600 movements. Now I'm on Google Street View going from Moorhouse to turn left onto Waltham Road. And there's a whole lot of vegetation that blocks visibility, right?
Yes.
So I'm looking at that thinking, wouldn't it be more useful to remove vegetation? That would achieve surely a lot more than putting a speed hump there.
So we will look to remove some of that vegetation for sightlines so people can definitely see someone's waiting.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you increase sightlines, people then have a tendency to increase because they can see a little bit more. And I guess we're just looking at that traffic calming where the riskiest point is for pedestrians crossing the road, because everything else is controlled, but that's uncontrolled. So having the zebra crossing with priority, we're encouraging people to walk across the road, and we just want to make sure that vehicles are travelling at safe speed.
Yeah. So would a resolution need anything around removing vegetation?
Got staff looking at it through detailed design, but if you wanted a noting provision, something we can make sure.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Yanni.
Yeah, cool. In terms of the cycle lane width on the Moorhouse, Gasson Street, what's the width that we're doing and what's the minimum standard?
So the ones that are within the scope of this project, we're looking at 6, which is your minimum standard width. The one on Gasson Street further south is, I think we measured it as a metre from curb face to white line, which is less than the desired. But Gasson Street, I guess, historically, it's been a traffic route and it's been wedged in to some extent because of the space that's needed for the traffic lanes.
Sorry, just to be clear, on the Moorhouse Ave Madras Street
Yeah.
side, it's 1.6, which is the minimum. Safe.
1.5 is the absolute minimum.
And what's the current width?
I think it's currently sitting around there, so we are trying to increase it slightly through
Right.
here.
It just looked pretty harrowing to see that photo of the truck going past. And is there any, like, what would be best practice for an intersection like this?
Most of our cycle lanes at intersections are generally 6 to 1.8 major cycleway. We are always just generally constrained by space. If we need more space, we're either going to move a curb and channel or we can take some more at the traffic lane widths. I think just here we've got minimum traffic lane width, and we've tried to increase the cycle lane as much as we can. As soon as you start putting lots of minimums together, then that introduces a risk in itself as well.
I was just gonna check, like, so I've asked previously, because when we got a presentation on the upgrade of Brougham Street, Gasson Street was proposed as a cycleway. And there was gonna be a whole bunch of work done around this corridor. But now I've been told that Brougham Street's nothing to do with council and we've got no involvement in it. I'm just trying to understand, because both of these intersections obviously will have be impacted by the Brougham Street plans. But I don't understand what the long-term planning is for this area and how it connects back, particularly in light of the concern that people have raised today around these being safer cycling routes.
So we'd have to come back to you on the relationship between Brougham Street, Montreal, Moorhouse and corridors between the two today. But the design of this intersection currently is we've tried to align it with best practice in terms of cycle lane widths, slip lane and pedestrian crossings.
Right, okay, but we've got a less than ideal minimum of cycleway.
So through
Cycle width.
detailed design, we could look to see if there's any more room we can take out the traffic lane widths to add into the cycle lane. And we'll get that through detailed design safety audit as well.
I just want to pick up on the timing because, I mean, even for some cars going through that Barbados Waltham, the timing is so quick at sometimes a day that you literally struggle to get from one side to the other. It's just a couple of seconds and it changes. I can't imagine what that's like for someone walking or bike. We seem to have a real issue with some of the timings around our intersections. Are you aware of that issue, or is that something that you like, how will you review it?
That's Lachlan.
But I guess context, like the minimum green time for a vehicle movement is 6 seconds. So while it might seem like 2 seconds or similar, it is 6 seconds, that's the minimum that will run. In general, I guess, base times at intersections vary over the day depending on how much traffic is on each approach, and it's controlled by a traffic signal control system, SCATs. So if there's a large period of time where there's not many vehicles at an approach, then it will keep, reducing the amount of time given to the approach to give more to other times. So you might be encountering those sort of issues, but other times it's just that busy. We're trying to, balance conflicting priorities.
What I'm trying to really understand though is, if it feels really quick for someone in a car, what does it feel like for someone on a cycle? It must feel like, quite dangerous. So I'm just wondering, is there a minimum time that we assess for cyclists or pedestrians to cross, and how do we Like, how do we do that to understand that we're not making a more dangerous environment?
Through the chair, the other, excuse me, in addition to what Lachlan explained on termination of the green time, so that when that, if it does run a minimum, not many of our intersections will run a minimum green, sometimes a little bit more than that. But at the end of that green, there'll be an intergreen time, and that time is the time to allow people who have just crossed that limit line to get away from any conflict zone, from any other streams of traffic opening. So what we could look at, we could go away and look at this later today quite easily and just double check what that intergreen time is, and check, is it appropriate if a cyclist who may be slower moving than a vehicle, they cross that limit line just as the green signal extinguishes, have they got enough time to clear the conflict zone?
Yeah, I just,
Yanni, I've got 8 more.
okay, just the bottom one from me was just, so Kiwi Rail, you know, on the part where we've done upgrades to.
Kiwi Rail got nothing to do with this corner.
But we were told, sorry, in our briefing, we were told if we upgrade Gaston Street for cyclists, we will be facing a significant bill to improve the Kiwi Rail
It's
project.
not doing this.
We're improving the cycle. Do you not see the cycle?
No, we're improving the intersection, right, we'll go on to the next question, Timothy.
Yeah, just with regards to the video we saw, on Madras Street, we've got a strip that seems a pointless garden between the road and the footpath. Could we not remove that and include that and extend the footpath slightly, widen the cycle lane, adjust the island to the west to make it a lot safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and also retaining the raised platform, the crossing, so cars will stop, because we know that drivers, when they're turning left into a one-way system, will not be looking left because they're expecting traffic to the right. I mean, New Zealand drivers on average are pretty bad, let's be honest. No, I've seen you drive the best. Your car parked out there. So to protect them, both pedestrians and cyclists, we put the risers in to make people basically stop and look to the left and etc. So you never looked at that, or we never looked at that?
So through the chair, excuse me again, if we did remove that patch of garden, you're quite right, we could increase the width of the footpath there and create more space. Difficulty is though, where we really need the space is on the apex of that corner. It's right on the point of the corner almost. So then you're facilitating people crossing south and east. But
Sorry, what I think Tim's saying is that the bottleneck that Danny had on his picture, as he got to that bit, it went from half reasonably wide to bugger all.
But we could slightly move the island, which people walk from the supermarket across to and sit there, slightly west, which would then, and it would slightly narrow that slip lane, but that's not a bad thing because it would also encourage people, as long as it was wide enough for emergency vehicles and trucks, which I'm sure it would be. So you're just moving that island slightly. You've taken that patch of hugely valuable scrub out, and you cut that in half. So you're widening the footpaths and you're widening cycle lane, and wouldn't that achieve more for everybody?
Look at moving the curb lane back, that is an additional expense. We do have some additional room on the east side of Madras Street where there's kind of a de facto cycle lane. The problem where Danny was riding northbound was that the slip lane island sticks out further than the northern curb line. So if we move that back, we're going to have to move the whole island back so that we're at least maintaining the small island that's here, because that's, I guess, the island size is the crux of the problem. So we can't just take some off and not give it back to somewhere else on the island, otherwise we're just shrinking the size of the island. And again, that's where we've got the issue. Then looks at the space we've got on Moorhouse Ave in trying to retain a left turn, a cycle lane, and the 3 traffic lanes, because we did look to see if we could increase the size of the island, but it becomes very tricky in trying to manage all the traffic lanes as well. So yes, we could take some off the island so it increases the space, but then we've we're just transferring the problem to the pedestrian waiting space, if that makes sense.
But if you don't touch the size of the island and you purely move across slightly, even 200 or 300 mils, buys space and improves the safety of the cycle lane, which then would flow in to the space there where we used to have that beautiful little garden.
Yeah, we're into the.
Cut that in half, so
Yeah, so if the recommendation was to, if option B was the preferred option, we could still look to see if we could rebuild the island slightly to the left, to give.
Thank you, Tim. Right, we've still got those here. Sarah, please.
Thank you so much. Just, I guess ahead of the other ones, an upgrade to Gasson, so that kind of, that space where people are worried about Gasson and the approaches to the intersection. When's that due at some point? Is that, is there an upgrade, is there a, you know, it was going to be part of the Brougham Street stuff and, you know, an upgrade, is that actually on a list of projects to do at some point?
So through the chair, we'll come back to you on that.
Not for years though, right?
And we'll need to go and speak to Waka Kotahi and just to get some feedback from them as well. And
Yeah.
we can then feed that back to you all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they weren't planning on doing the work, they were hoping we would do it, so, yeah. And anything on the upgrade, the red paint that many have mentioned and I had in my list as well. Do you need a resolution to upgrade the red paint on the Barbados Waltham one?
No, we don't. The Barbados one has been changed to green on the approach to Moorhouse. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. But I know we did Waltham, which,
Oh,
right, but actually all of those bits of red, you know, the wee bike slip lane, all of that kind of stuff.
And
Maintenance.
Maintenance to do that, so we
so
we'll just go on the action list now and all of those bits.
as they deteriorate and maintenance come in and do works, they will replace what was red with green.
But it needs to be done, and like, we don't know when maintenance would be done. Okay, right, that's right. Hook turns, for that particular intersection, will we need a resolution to put 2 hook turns in, because there's 2 pits there where people would turn? So can we get some wording for adding hook turns into that particular intersection? So to be on the Moorhouse Ave, if you were coming from Barbados and you wanted to go along Moorhouse, and then on Moorhouse if you're wanting to turn down into Waltham.
We start install hot turns where appropriate.
Is that enough?
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
That'd be sufficient.
Yeah, yeah, okay,
Any more, Sarah?
yeah, yeah.
Eight more to go.
There's some concern from people, you know, who don't want to bike across here, that the staggered crossing might make it too difficult for large bikes or cargo bikes. Cargo bikes are really popular in the city at the moment, lots of kids being taken to and from schools, preschools, those kind of things. Is it possible? That looks really awkward with those crossings there. Are we able to change the layout a little bit to make it easier for cargo bikes?
So we are, I guess, constrained a little bit by the space in the island. The one at Barbados is as big as we can achieve. Like, I think from a cyclist perspective, if we can make it safer on the road rather than having to do the dog leg staggered, that would be preferable. But really, I guess the objective of that one was just to improve the pedestrian crossing, and I think cycle access around the connection to Ferry Road does need to be looked at more of a helicopter view, because we do need to start improving the cycle connection from the southeast in particular through. Even trying to get into Arta from this point is quite difficult because the footpaths are just footpaths, they're not shared paths. So I think in hoping that our cycle network planning team can look at that and maybe look at some projects. Yes, it is difficult to provide for everyone through that staggered crossing.
I'm just thinking that without even changing the space for a cargo bike or something like that that's turning, it's the above ground stuff rather than the actual ground stuff. So if you could just make the fence bit slightly shorter for that staggered crossing, you see what I mean? Then you've got a bit more space for, so you, less of a tool might be easier if that was able to be done. Aaron, are you okay with including a resolution to get the hook turns in without having to move it?
To my version.
Yeah. So we can add, add in,
You mean just the paint box?
the little green paint box that go on the road for indicating where people can make safe turns. The staff, add in hook turns where appropriate on these intersections. Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mark, please.
I was wondering whether there's any possibility or any thought down the track or even as this goes in of students pick up protect some of the cycle lanes, some of the other activities. Would that?
It could be looked at if there's sufficient room, but if we're not going to make the cyclists, then it maybe something a little bit more robust than just the standalone hit sticks, because otherwise we have ongoing maintenance issues with some of the ones that we put in. But that's probably just get them more.
Sort of the action behind you. Cyclists, I think they like the idea of that extra.
I've just got two quick questions. The first one is around the proposed 75mm speed humps on the approaches. At what speed are cars expected to drive?
So we recommend that people traverse them at around 25. Existing speed is 30, so we know that anyone that gets hit over kilometers an hour does have that lower chance of survival. I think it all depends on what vehicle you're driving, as to how much you actually feel. But the road markings, the signage, all kind of infer to drivers you need to slow down. Get a bump you go over it, but 25 is what we usually sign.
Cool. And in terms of the Councillor Kewen's recommendation, was there a safety? I don't know if you call it audit. Was there a safety audit done? And you've got a point system, correct? So there are different options which have different points. If we did take it to speed bumps, do you know in terms of the safety rating?
It would reduce the safety rating because they're just any primary safe system treatment as a kind of you need to slow down and stop, force you to stop type thing. It would people, especially at Moorhouse into Waltham, you don't even need to really slow down currently. Like that. They are big, wide sweeping corners. And from a budget perspective, it's easier to add the speed hump than it is to start changing the whole geometry of the corners with curb and channel and drainage and things. So we've looked at the lowest cost option to get the maximum benefit, really. Speed hump.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Right, we're getting through it now. We're at 6. Aaron, please.
I answered mine with a Google. It was, can you on the slip lanes, if you have concerns, have a stop sign on slip lanes, and the majority of New Zealanders give way, but is there any stop signs? Anywhere?
I don't think all of our
But
slip lanes would give way.
yeah, but could we, if we thought like the one outside, we thought, oh, they should all stop here, or the same with the supermarket one?
I guess it comes down to the visibility. Yes, we can look to put in a stop control, but if people have in excess of the visibility that's needed generally for a stop control, are they actually going to stop, or will they continue to operate on a giveaway basis? And so I think in these locations, the visibility for vehicles is generally pretty good. So in terms of the warrant for a stop, it wouldn't necessarily affect it. Look, no, for vehicles, so not dangerous, but for vehicles, if they can have visibility, good visibility in excess of what we normally say that is kind of a limiting factor for a stop control, then we would go with that.
Can't
but
not.
no.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, mate. Pauline, please, and Kelly.
Yep, thanks. 2.4 on page 25. And you're talking about the impact of removing the slip plane on this asset. So you're expecting an initial increase in delays to 40 to 45 seconds. And then you go on to say, however, in time the traffic flow will reach a new equilibrium. Does that mean that it's compared to what it is now? And
Pass that to Lachlan.
okay.
I think what really, what we're saying there is that, over time, signal timings adjust as well to account for that change in the, like, in this case, left turn change to signal control. So we're able to give more time to particular movements to try and balance the delays on the approaches differently.
And how confident are you that that delay will disappear in time?
No, I think it will remain at the value that we've said there. Yeah, you're changing a give way control, which can go at any point regardless of what phase is running at the intersection, to a case where you can only turn left on a particular phase.
Do you think that delay is quite significant?
It's a subjective thing, but it's within the realms of what's typical, and that other movements at the intersection experience delays in that realm and
Yeah, true. Okay, thank you.
Help.
Yeah, thank you for your work on this. Just regarding the gas and Moorhouse Madras section, I note that you've got in the report that there's been no crashes involving walking and cycling in the last 10 years. First question is, were there any from before that you're aware of?
Normally just look at that 10-year period. Things change quite significantly, and I guess even just in Christchurch we had the earthquake, and since then traffic changed and our streets have changed. So generally we just look at 10 years.
And so after since I think it's 2022, you've got some data, and also going back 8 years before that, there's been 38 crashes at that intersection. Do you know how many of them have involved cars coming out of Moorhouse into Madras on that slip lane and hitting cars going through? Do you have that kind of breakdown at all?
I can get that breakdown for you. I think we just focused really, the main focus was just looking at the trend at that intersection, and it has generally been red light running on the main roads. And since putting in the red light cameras, they probably haven't had the effect that we've wanted, and the crashes, red light running crashes are still occurring through the main ones. But I can provide, I'll go back and have another look, and
I'm just curious. And the other thing is, I wasn't aware that there was a red light camera there. Are they quite well signposted and marked?
We have 2 red light cameras on our network, one at Manchester Street Moorhouse and one at Madras Moorhouse. There are signs in place, but they're currently being handed over to NZTA Whakapatahi. Those cameras for us, and additional signage will be done this month, so people are aware that there's red light cameras.
Just a final point. I totally agree with Councillor Scandra on widening that island. Yeah, because I've cycled through there and had that same experience that Daniel had. Pinch point.
Righto, thank you. Celeste.
Wondered, in terms of like down the track, you sort of add a noting provision R and the integration there. It's quite an important connection there. It's something that would be useful for us to look at.
I don't think it is necessary. There is a gap that maybe does need to be considered by staff between the new signalised crossing outside Arta and Moorhouse Avenue, because the shared path stops
But Gemma has raised that asked the planners to look at holistically at the area and how it connections, and we've acknowledged this gap. Okay, so that would already be.
Yeah, so
it'll be
Great, thank you.
Mel, then Becky.
Yesterday, yesterday, I think was Aaron, mentioned about St John's, or was it? You were going to talk to St John's or some emergency services before today. Have you done that?
So, we haven't done that for the emergency services. Councillor Hinstock requested that we liaise with EGAN regarding the bus. We had some initial feedback. In terms of emergency services, they were all sent plans as part of the engagement process.
Yeah.
We didn't receive anything back with the submission. We've had, I guess, general submissions from them in the past, and feedback from them. In terms of whether there's a slip lane or not a slip lane and another raised hump, I guess they didn't submit on the other humps that are proposed. They would be comfortable with option B, but we don't have that. We haven't received any submission from them on that.
Okay. And for the cameras, do we make the money from those or not?
It's all nationalised, yeah.
Which is why we don't put them in. Is there a way for us to do that?
Revenue
No,
getter.
so
That'd
we-
be so good.
Good.
Wait, thank you, number
We
plate.
continuously advocate for additional safety cameras on our network.
Yeah.
And through the annual plan, Councillor Harrison had asked about additional surveillance safety cameras on the network, and a memo to you in response to that request. But generally, NZTA are taking over all of the safety cameras, whether that's speed or red light running, and are coming up with a program, a national program to roll out more. And as staff, we continue to advocate for them on our network. It's an ongoing conversation.
Okay, and
Thank you, again, Gemma. My first question is a supplementary to Councillor Barber's in relation to the statistics and any data in relation to accidents at that intersection with the slip lane. I asked the same question yesterday and I wrote down the answer, and we were told in the briefing that there have not been any reported pedestrian accidents occurring at that site as a result of the slip road. So can I just clarify what it was then that you were going to follow up with your data?
My understanding from Councillor Barber's question was just about any crashes involving vehicles or people using the slip lane and having a collision.
So that was my question yesterday, and we were told that there was no data, there was nothing in the system as a result of that, with that slip lane intersection.
Apologies. My understanding of your question was just around vulnerable road users, so people walking and cycling, not necessarily vehicles as well. So I don't have the data with me about vehicle to vehicle, but there hasn't been any involving people walking or cycling. And so, yeah, sorry, that, yeah.
So, and then my final question then is, can I have some clarity around the depth of the proposed platform on that slip lane into Madras? When I look at our picture on page 29 of our agenda, we have 75 moves for the speed humps on the southern intersections, but on that one, we don't have information about the depth. Is it the same?
It would be the same. Yeah.
So you use different language though. You talk about a proposed platform, but then on the other ones, you talk about a proposed speed hump. Are we talking about all one and the same?
So on the southern side, we're just looking at a standard hump, and that would be in advance of the zebra crossing. So that would be 75 millimeters high.
Yep.
The one on the slip lane going from Moorhouse into Madras would be something more like Papanui Bly's, where you've got the table rather than.
it's flat number.
Okay, and what is the depth of that?
That would be 75 mil.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the last one, then we'll have morning tea and a break to get our head around what we're going to do in the break department. Sarah, please.
Thank you. Just following up on a couple of questions that have just been asked around the safety aspect and crashes and things. And we did discuss this briefly yesterday. The key driver for this particular project is about accessibility rather than safety. There is safety benefits, but it's about giving people access through the area rather than. That makes sense.
Yeah, so improving accessibility by increasing choice, providing more crossings is what it is mainly about. There are safety benefits to doing that. We'll have safer infrastructure to facilitate accessibility.
Good answers, 11:15. We'll see you back. Okay, thank you very much. Jimmy, you want to clarify something?
Yes,
please.
a question from councillor Croker earlier around decision making in the part A. So we just wanted to clarify that by the by Sam.
Just to confirm, the Plan A map contained in the delegations register, which outlines the metropolitan significance, covers both sides of the road. So once the council's made its decision, only the council could revoke that decision. However, any proposed changes to that could go through the community board as a part A recommendation to council.
I say that.
Which should be a council decision.
So it comes back here.
Yeah. So council.
Right, now, so we're gonna. Aaron and I had the main one, but Tim has put in an amendment. Was there, which just a bit of clarity on it.
Yeah, so we just walk through what the motion that's on the table at the moment that's been moved or seconded. So moved by councillor Kewen and seconded by the mayor. That is which is so similar to what's in the report as option A and option B, but councillor Kewen and the mayor have added in these two aspects, and also there have been three things added in at the end, which have been suggested by other councillors, and the move and seconder have agreed to, which is about book turns, requesting staff to look at sequences and timing, and also request staff to investigate options of widening.
And so on.
Scroll back down. You scroll up to 6, I can't read it.
So if we go back,
Speed up on guesses.
So the difference is Tim's amendment.
Very simple. My amendment is keep with A as staff recommended and keep in the rises and the speed humps. So at Waltham, and staff's option B, but at Gesson and Madras, but retain the humps and the rises and support 9, 10 and 11.
so that's just removing the two bits in yellow. It's what Tim's amendment is.
That's for the colourblind.
We all. Okay,
So what are we voting on? Are we voting on mine?
your amendment. So this is Tim's amendment to have it that there, apart from the platform, which is in anyway, that the speed humps go in, stay in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I-
Yes.
Just a question.
Yes.
So returning to Aaron's first one, I'm just trying to anticipate what happens if it does Aaron's original motion include the raised platform in the slip lane?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the way it goes, if Tim's one fails, it goes to Aaron and mine, and if Aaron and mine fails, it goes to Sarah and.
Okay, so returning then, so if this one fails, and it goes back to Aaron's, it retains the raised platform
Yes.
on the slip lane,
Mhm.
but it removes the other speed humps in the other corners. Thank you.
Okay. But it also retimes the lights, gives it a bit more room and the hookers.
Thank you.
Okay, Aaron?
So just
That's
process question. Tim's is just option A at Barbados and option B at. How did that become an amendment?
Because we had, that one wasn't put as a motion, it's only an officer recommendation. So the actual motion on the table is this one here. And so you can amend that. We did.
Rejected it.
Yeah.
Right.
We've done it before that way.
Okay.
I agree why you're concerned.
Be mean, Sam.
Right, so yeah, okay, here we go. We're actually doing very well, Sarah.
Just, I almost hate to mention it because I don't like it, but there is currently on the plans no speed hump at Barbados Street, Aaron. So your motion for no speed bump at Barbados Street is irrelevant because there is no speed hump at Barbados.
Okay.
It's on
So one on the map going up.
That intersection.
Yeah, that's on Waltham Road.
Oh, sorry, well, I was meaning that intersection, but if we want to call it Waltham, Barbados. Moorhouse,
You said
sorry.
Barbados Street.
Going to be to ask the staff for.
Yeah, we've tidied it up.
Can we debate?
Right, staff's turn.
So I guess in terms of the safety for people using the slip lane, we are now giving them priority through the provision of a zebra crossing, which infers that they have the right to walk across the road. They do still need to wait for vehicles to slow down and stop. But in terms of safety, we are removing, I guess, the key thing that would actually make it safer for people crossing that slip lane due to the current high speed of vehicles turning left from Moorhouse into Waltham. So in providing the zebra crossing, we are improving safety, but the N30A design guidance, best practice guidance is that you install traffic calming at the same time to make sure that it's as safe as possible when we're giving people priority to cross the road.
So this is this one here you're talking to.
But
No.
in general, so that would be at Barbados, Waltham, Moorhouse, and the slip lanes from Moorhouse into Gatton, because they're all high-speed turns due to the current geometry of the intersection.
Can you clarify, in that case, from what you're saying, there is a speed bump at Barbados Street?
So there's a speed hump on Moorhouse Avenue for the turn into Waltham.
It's just, it's called Barbados Waltham.
Barbados, Waltham.
Not on Barbados.
Yeah, so it says post 75
So
non-legal
can
speed.
we clarify?
Yes.
Because we've had a councillor saying there's no.
Now.
Yeah. Mary, that's what's called in the report.
There we go.
Okay, right, sorry, it's a speed bump, yeah.
Intersection.
Right.
Okay, and that one you'll do something down there. Right, Tyler had a question, then we'll go into debate, I think, otherwise we.
Not sure if you've got the data on this, but would you be able to tell us the average speed that's currently being used going from Moorhouse into Waltham?
I don't have that data on me. It's posted at 50 kilometers an hour, and the current geometry doesn't require you to slow down to make the turn, only giving way to other traffic coming on Waltham Road is what would make you slow down to make the turn.
I see, so you're anticipating that they would be going 50 kilometers. Yeah, 50 kilometers now turning into this. Okay.
So now jump quickly into debate and discussion. So who would like? Tim?
Look, thank you all very much. Thank you especially to staff. I think both of these designs are outstanding, but when we are looking at this has been driven because of the stadium. But events at the stadium of this size that will affect this, what will be 6 to 9 events a year? I mean, that's ridiculous. So the important thing here at these intersections are the other 240 or 60 days a week where students and others will be normally using these intersections. That's the real crux here. I absolutely believe that the speed humps and the rises do encourage traffic to slow down and makes the environment safer. That's why I'm moving an amendment to keep those in both plans. I think the Waltham Barbados is well and truly overdue, as is the Madras Gatton. And it'd be nice at some stage in the future, as I mentioned, to look at the Manchester intersection to make that safer. But I think now that these have been identified, it is really important to move forward. And I think both the crossings and the safety measures are absolutely crucial. But I do think the slip lane on is option B and Gatton Madras should be retained as an essential to keep that traffic flowing. There are 3 parties to this: pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists, and I think that is the one that meets all the needs. So I hope you support it. Thank you.
Surely. Yeah, Sarah?
Thanks so much. It's been a really interesting session. I'd like to thank all of the people who came along and spoke today, as well as those who took the time to make a submission and to start processing all of that and having some really clear answers for us. I know that the option B with the slips lane retained looks like it, and now the raised platform is still there for the pedestrian crossing. looks likely to pass, given people's comments around the table so far. And while people have clearly understood, because of the deputations and submissions, about the value of having the raised platform there, those same arguments apply to every other slip lane. So it's just that the other slip lanes didn't have a proposal to close them, and therefore people didn't speak about the need for a safe crossing into that area. But the same argument apply. So for a pedestrian to get safely across a slip lane and into the island, the traffic really does need to be slowed down. They are turning a corner. They should be slowing anyway. They just often don't. They need to be going slow enough so that they could give way if they needed to, but they often don't. We know this area had a lot of students, for a lot of the year. Plus there's going to be large numbers, a few evenings a year with people being parked on the south side of Moorhouse Ave and going to the stadium. I would urge you all to vote in favour of Tim Scandrett's amendment, which would enable the additional 3 really low-level speed humps to be retained to make sure that pedestrians are safe when they're crossing into those slip lanes. While there's lots of students, that we have people with disabilities, we have older residents who are slower to walk across those things, and when traffic is fast, it makes it difficult for everyone. So yeah, I urge you to vote favour of Tim's amendment, and we'll see where we go from there. Thanks.
Thank you. Ty?
Me, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, kia ora. So just to get it out on the table, like both of these intersections are absolute turkeys, right? Like right now, I've spent my life going through them as a student. So I went to school on that intersection, and trying to get across that road as a student was like a turkey shoot when I was at high school trying to get through there. And I still go through both of them as a motorist mostly. Rarely as a cyclist, because it is just so dangerous going through there. And both Melanie and I personally know a person who was killed on a bike going through one of those intersections. So we do need improvement. But that said, getting to Ara from that direction is also still a real turkey on the existing cycle network. So any improvements there would be welcome. I still struggle to go through the cycle though. But the biggest turkey of all is that slip lane into Madras. And if you really need to use it, you're probably lost running around like a headless turkey. I never drive past there without seeing someone flying into it and then suddenly have to freeze. So I would have supported option A because I like my turkeys for Christmas, and turkeys don't vote for Christmas. But Tim's amendment is an excellent one, and I'm very, very happy to support it for the reasons that he outlined, and it's a sensible compromise.
Pauline?
You've got similar, and thank you for the staff for a really good report and the briefing yesterday and all the slides and answering all the questions. I originally was going to support the slip lane remaining. Then I heard the deputations and I thought I'd actually better support just removing the slip lane. Now I've gone back to keeping the slip lane because I feel comfortable that staff are addressing the concerns that have been raised by the submitters. That the platform there staying, and thank you Aaron for agreeing to keep that one. It's really important because that will stop people, as Councillor Fuel said, speeding around there. And also noting too that there is another pedestrian crossing on Madras Street a bit further down. It's a brand new one that brings people from Ara across there, so that will also help things. And I'm quite pleased with the noting provisions in there, addressing the cycling concerns that were raised by the submitters. And the Mayor has also put one in asking staff to investigate maybe making a little bit more space there on Madras Gas and Moorhouse for people to stand and wait. Another reason I've changed my mind to support the slip lane staying in was I think that 40 to 45 second delay is quite a long time if we take it out at this stage. So I think Tim's amendment is the right one to support here. I think we'll get the best outcome on this meeting. And we can always look at it again later. But I think actually most of the foot traffic's going to come out from the stadium on the other side of the street as well, on the eastern side, because why would they cross? And I think this is the best outcome, so I'll be supporting Councillor Scandrett's amendment. Thank you.
Samuel?
I won't be supporting councillor Scandett's amendment in terms of adding the speed bumps back into the resolution. And it's probably best I don't say anything else.
Andre, Agapanthus, think of anything to about?
There was actually on the list to discuss here, the Agapanthus. I was saving that for last, so I won't spoil it. I was gonna pick up on Tyrone's point around turkeys, and very familiar with holding a few turkeys across the road in City Well. I would thank staff for sorting this before the stadium opens and not after. Last thing was roadworks after it's open. And I think Pauline's point is a really, really good one, that most will be crossing on the eastern side, because of course the stadium's on the eastern side of Madras Street. And I think these will actually be very, very well used before and after games, because there's a whole lot of potential free on-street parking that people will use. There's no two ways about that. It'll be a bit like the good old days of Lancaster Park, where you park a wee while away, and sure enough, you'll probably be able to now park outside Lancaster Park, as many will do, walk to the new stadium, which would be nice nostalgia. So I see most of the crossing happening on that side of the road, and absolutely I do support removing those damn dirty Agapanthus plants, which should be banned and removed everywhere, in my view. So I will be supporting councillor Cohen's resolution today. Thank you.
Mel?
Right. Look, I theoretically support my community board submission for options A at both intersections, because this obviously the clues in the name, this is about pedestrian improvement. And it was pretty clear from the consultation data that we were shown that, you know, the view of drivers and the view of pedestrians and the view of cyclists are all quite different to each other, as you probably would expect. I will support the option, the amendment for Tim, because that is a pragmatic thing to do today. But I just wanted to mention a couple of things. So one, when I was crossing at this intersection a month or two ago, I did see a skateboarder, as Callum had referred to, trying to cross at the slip lane that's on that block by where the train station is, and this big vehicle was coming, and he kind of hesitated, ended up tripping out into the road. So, it was a near miss in my view, which I saw from the other side. So that's why I really think that the platforms are really, really important, because it can happen not just to little kids, it can happen to anybody. But also with the Waltham intersection, a board that Tyrone and I are on, Hamish Grant was the cyclist that was killed there, a very confident cyclist who was actually going for a bike ride up to the hill and got wet there, was in hospital, and subsequently died. And he was an amazing volunteer who did a whole lot of things, cycling around, giving food to people and giving pro bono time to for his legal work. So what I'm saying is that we need to prioritise supporting active transport modes, because everyone is a worthy individual, and so that's why I support what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, look, I'm happy to support this Tim's amendment. Fundamentally, I'm opposed to speed humps. I don't think they give us all the benefits that they're touted to. However, in regard to this, as a compromise to keep that slip lane open, I'm happy for the speed humps to go in and supporting Tim's.
Yanni, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, don't know how many people have ever had a car crash in a slip lane, but I've had the misfortune of being hit twice in my car where someone's run into the back of me. And I think the point that was made from the submitters is like actually really good. People are busy looking at the traffic coming on, particularly around streets that have higher speeds. So, you know, Brougham Street, Moorhouse Ave, cars do go quite fast. And actually it is sensible, I think, to make sure that people can look ahead, because both times when I've been hit, people have been looking the other way and not seeing that I've stopped in front for something coming. So to me, that having speed humps in these areas actually does make a lot of sense. I think it does make a safer space for all. I'm particularly concerned that we haven't done enough work around Gasson Street. And I see there's some resolutions here which I strongly support to look at improving the width of the cycling space and the pedestrian space. Like, it's really obvious that in the future, when Bram Street gets upgraded, we're going to see massive traffic impacts through here. And I think at some point the council should actually get a briefing on Bram Street. I've previously asked for one, being told it wasn't anything to do with council, but we know from the work that was done initially, there are a whole bunch of projects in this intersection and this corridor that we were looking at to get better connections for people coming into the city, particularly on things like cycling, pedestrians, and of course also the traffic. I also do want to raise that in the briefings we've had from Kiwi Rail, we've been told that there are discussions going on about Gasson Street. So I don't know when that conversation will happen, but with how we've been treated in the past with Kiwi Rail, we know that when we upgrade these intersections and cycleways, there's a risk that we're suddenly imposed with a huge additional cost. And I would still like us to consider what's happening around that, because as soon as the stadium is open, this place is going to be massively used. Someone said they don't know where they're going to park for the stadium. I'll tell you where people are going to park based on my experience with Lancaster Park, an area that I've represented for a long time. They're going to park in Sydenham, and they're going to walk from Sydenham, from all the industrial side streets that they've found parking, like they used to do in Phillipstown, a couple of blocks down to the stadium. And they're going to cross this intersection and use Gasson Street and Madras Street and Moorhouse Ave as a key crossing point. So yeah, I personally would be more comfortable removing the slip lane, but I recognise that that doesn't have the support today. I do think that's a bit of a shame. I did like the idea that people wanted to talk with the supermarket, and I hope if option B does go through, that perhaps someone can talk to the supermarket around future land use, because it does seem there's possibly another solution there as well. Thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, so just cover off a couple of points, and thanks for raising that bit about the supermarket. That's one of the changes that Phil and I have made to our original and that was based on some of the submissions today. There was some good pictures shown of the poor visibility at that corner. So we've now empowered staff to go away and look at how that can be changed to widen the footpath, not only the footpath, but from the other submission, the cycle lane as well that's going through there. And then there was serious suggestion around the hook turns, which come from the submission. So more than happy to include that. All ours is about traffic flow and keeping the traffic flowing in these areas. I struggle to see people coming off Moorhouse Ave going into Waltham Road, which isn't a 90-degree corner. It's closer to 55, maybe 60 at best. So you're hooking backwards as you go uphill. And so you're going around there at 50. The odd person would, and 2 o'clock in the morning, no doubt they do, but majority by far don't. One of the concerns I have around putting in the pedestrian crossings and then the raised platform, and Mel made a great example of where the person skateboarding across then hesitated and stopped and tripped, they would have gone. They would have had a clear run on their skateboard and would have gone. They wouldn't have hesitated and stopped. And something I believe is the reason why the slip lanes don't have vehicle versus people incidents there, is that the pedestrians are very cautious because they know the dangers as you go through there. When we make these changes, we are lowering the danger level, so you also will you'll change the behaviour of the pedestrians because they will feel safer, so they will take more risks. So just be warned of that, remembering that putting in speed humps in those pedestrian crossings, we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't actually exist, it's perceived and it is felt by people, but that does mean that you behave more carefully around those situations. And yes, this is triggered by the stadium, I agree with that part, but on those big half dozen to 10, hopefully 20 big nights a year that the stadium has, when there's thousands of people coming out of somewhere, all of the traffic behaves differently, whether you've got traffic management or not. People don't go, people don't go ploughing through crowds. You slow right down, and you have people wandering all over the road. Half of them might be sourced or whatever. People's driving behaviour changes, And that's a good thing, because that's just a respect for your fellow human beings. But these crossings that have been put forward by staff are great designs for the two sides that have no crossing at all. And people run across there anyway. I've done it myself. And further down Moorhouse, we need more of them. Like a worse intersection than either of these is the Durham Street by the supermarket there, where there's one side with no pedestrian crossing and people will try and get across there. That's even more dangerous than these ones. So the sooner we get further along Moorhouse and get some of these done, better. So I fully support those. But the one thing that Phil and I have done differently here is the speed humps. People of Christchurch don't like speed humps. That's all I'm going to say to this table. They don't like speed humps. Small percentage do, by far the majority don't. So if you put them in, just remember what year it is that you're putting them in, and you have to justify it to the voters in your ward that you are all about those speed humps. And it's pretty simple, because Phil and I were happy for this to go in, be assessed later on. If there is a danger and people aren't slowing down and giving way at the pedestrian crossings, then we will add the speed humps. We're more than happy to do it later on once they're needed. But until then, we would go back the public on this and not have them.
Okay, right, we've enough. So this is Tim's amendment we're putting in, which puts not the raised platform, the speed humps back in, more or less, okay? Well, the raised platform's in anyway, so it's just the speed humps are now going in, which we're out. So all of the
lane stays in.
Yeah, slip lane stays in, yep. All of those in favour of Tim's amendment to put the speed humps back in where they may be taken out, please say aye. Aye. Against?
No.
Yeah.
Right. Someone's called division, so.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So division and councillor Scandrett's amendment, as the mayor just explained. Deputy Mayor Cotter.
Aye.
Barber.
Yes.
Councillor Coker.
Yes.
Councillor Donovan.
Yes.
Councillor Field.
Aye.
Councillor Harrison Hunt.
Yes.
Councillor Henstock.
No.
The mayor. Councillor Johansson.
Yes.
Councillor Kewen.
No.
Councillor McDonald.
No.
Councillor McClellan.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
No.
Councillor Peters.
No.
Councillor Scandrett.
Yes.
Councillor Templeton.
Aye.
That's 10-4. Carried.
Yeah, right, so that is carried. So now I will put is that right, Mary? Right.
yes, yeah.
I put what I call the Aaron and my one with Tim's amendment added into it, which is everything as it was, including the with the raised platform in it and the speed humps everywhere else. So all those in favour of that one, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against?
No. Just record mine against.
Speed humps are in.
I go over this line.
Right, so that is carried. So the foreshadowed motion's touched.
Yep.
And we go on to
Got it through, Sarah.
number 6.
I thought you guys were hoping that would fail.
Voted against.
Okay,
it.
Jimmy, you're up.
No.
Seen you for ages.
No to speed bumps.